Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today is our topic-based webinar, and today's topic we're going to be talking about what's considered kind of how to post what's called actual usage for a part, the different ways that you can post the actual usages, and the different reports that let you run estimated versus actual numbers. So when we say post actual usage, whenever you do a quote in the system will always estimate out, hey, you're going to use this much material, you use this much labor, this much time. So it gives you all these values as estimated numbers. Obviously, though, sometimes the job doesn't always go as planned, or something happens, or maybe even, you were able to do something more efficient and use an extra, we're able to use half a sheet somewhere. There's things that you can do that would alter the actual numbers that you use compared to the numbers that the system thought you were going to use. And so what we do with that then is there's ways to post the actual usages into the system so that way you can tell the system what was actually used. Now this has two very important functions. The number one function is, obviously, well, we thought we were going to make this much money on the job. Well, at the end, we actually ended up making this much because either we had to redo the job and had to use an extra sheet, or we printed this job at the same time that this job was printing, so we actually printed it in less time. So overall, it's a good way to see what you actually did on that job compared to how you thought the job was going to do. And then the other function that makes it really important is if you do inventory in the system would say, hey, we're going to reserve out these 5 sheets. Well, in the end, you ended up using 10 sheets. So instead of removing the reserve value, it would remove the actual value. So your inventory numbers are a lot more accurate whenever you do inventory, or whenever you have inventory and you use the actual usages. So they take on that ability as well. So we have a job that we went ahead and set up. So order 1081 is just a simple 6 48 by 96 acrylic prints made from acrylic and laminated. We go look here at the parts. We got all of our estimated values. So 144 feet of that's trim caps there, 6 sheets of material, 48 feet of laminate. So all the parts here we have these estimated numbers. So with part usage, once you get to the job, there's 3 ways to post usage to the system. The first way I'm going to more just kind of mention because there's another video that talks about this already. But the first method is if you have Production Terminal, you can log in and post usage through Production Terminal. There's another video that discusses that in detail and go through that. But that's one method, is to use Production Terminal. The next method is probably the most preferred method. They added this one not too long ago, so this is a fairly new feature. It's been in the last few releases, but you can post usage directly from the order itself. And that's just a matter of if you go to the order, we go Edit, and you go to the Parts tab. It'll show you, here's all the parts, and there's fields here for current, added, and revised actual usage. If you don't see those columns, what you can do is you can right-click anywhere in this section, say Column Chooser, and then make sure that the current and added actual usages are checked. So if they're unchecked, this is most likely what you would see. And as long as we have those fields checked, then those columns will show. So the description of what each column is current actual usage is what has already been posted. So if you're coming back around to this job and posting additional usage on top of what had been posted earlier, the current would show you what has already been posted. Added actual usage is what we're going to be posting this time, and the revised is just the current plus the added. So obviously in this case here, without any current, our revised numbers are always going to be our added. So you can just put your cursor here. There it goes, took a second to catch up, on the added field, and just kind of go down the list and put in what the actual values posted as opposed to what the estimated are. And you got the estimated number here. So we got 1.2, so we'll say, that one was pretty spot on. It took about 1.2 hours to print that. Laminating, something happened with the laminator. It jammed, took us a little bit longer, so we were on that laminator the entire hour. Finishing labor, we'll say that's about spot on. That laminated labor, since we were on there for an hour fixing it up, we were there for almost the entire hour, so we'll put in 0.86. And then same thing, well, with the printer, we actually were able to start that job and work on something else. So it estimated an hour and a half. Well, really, the person was at the job maybe for only half of that time. So we'll say 0.6 of an hour. Print ink, we'll say 192. Acrylic sheets. So we were doing the job, estimated 6 sheets, and one of the sheets ended up, that we printed on, ended up scuffing, or something happened on it where we had to go through and use another sheet. So we'll say 7 sheets. Then 48 feet here. And we broke a couple of the edge caps, so we had to use 172. So you go down the list and you just put in all of your usages, and it will go through and say actual usage employee, so it fills in your name, and then the revised is the actual usage there. So if we save that, now it'll go through and show us the current usage is all those numbers that we posted. Now, one important thing to note is the actual usages will not affect the price to the customer. So even though you're telling the system that more parts were used, it doesn't charge the customer for that additional material. It just charges what the estimated value was. So you don't have to worry about this affecting the price of your job. It'll just give you a little bit more accurate margin. And there's a couple ways to view that. So if we come over here, you got this estimated cost total. You can pull that down and select actual cost. And that will give you a comparison for the actual numbers here that were posted as opposed to the numbers that were estimated. Real quick note with that, I just want to jump over, I had pulled up the acrylic part here. So if we right click acrylic, go say view part, we had 20 sheets on hand to begin with. So the system thought there would be 14 sheets once we were done with this job. Well, because we posted the actual usage for 7 sheets, if we go look at our inventory for this part, it will go through and puts in the remaining amount of 13 because it removed 7 from inventory. So that's kind of just illustrating the point that we talked about earlier, where the actual usages are really important because that can determine your inventory numbers based off how they're posted. So that's the second way. The next method I'll show you, because this next method, obviously, if the job is closed, you can't edit the job to post usage. So this is the way that A, if the job's closed and you need to post usage, you would do it, and B, this is kind of how some of the older versions of the software used to post usage. So if we go here and under the dashboard selection, if you go down, there is a dashboard called Post Part Usage Cards. So if we do that, it pulls up a dashboard specifically for posting usage cards. So you pull that up, you tell it the order, so we'll say 1081, and it loads up all the parts on that order. So this way you could kind of say if you're only posting usage for a few of the parts, you could only check off the ones that you're going to post usage for. You could check up here if you want to post it all, or check off the individual ones if you're only posting a few parts to use at once. So in this example, I'm just going to go ahead and say we need to use the acrylic, trim cap, and we'll go through and say there was some additional printing that happened. So we'll say the printer and print labor. So you check off the parts that you want and hit this fill columns. And what that will do is it will create an actual usage card for each of the parts that we have selected. And the cards are set up a little bit differently. So if you have a equipment or labor part, it's going to give you an option here to put in straight time, different time values. If it's a material part, you're going to be using the quantity field here. So looking at each of these cards, it will show you, okay, we were estimated to use 144. The current, so the accrued, what's already been posted is 172. So I'm just posting usage on top of what had already been posted. So this isn't replacing the usage that you've already done. It's adding usage on top of what's been posted. So we'll go here and say, let's see, that was 172 there. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have an extra 28 feet that we use there. We had to use an extra 2 sheets of acrylic, and it took them an extra half hour of printing, and they had to watch the printer the entire time because we were being super careful with it. So we put those cards in, and then we go here and hit this post. And that will go through now and post usage to that job. So if I jump back to that order 1081, you'll see here I'm now at 9 sheets of current usage and 200 feet of edge treatment, and my other parts went up. So it posted a card on top of what we had already posted, and you can actually see the individual cards. If you click here under usage cards here at the bottom, you actually click on that and click on the different parts, and it will show you the different cards. It'll show you who posted it, for what value, so you can see the individual postings that had happened for each of those parts. And then you don't have to worry about this too much, but just for information purposes, you can always click on the activity tab and it will show you all the individual part postings if you wanted to see when something was posted. So this is more just kind of an activity screen of all the parts that had been posted. So those are the 3 different ways of posting parts. There's one other topic I want to talk about before we look into some of the reports, and that is with the new screen for posting the parts, what we can actually do is if I edit this job, and I'm going to put a couple versions of this print on here. So let's say we're doing multiple different versions of that same job. So we've got 3 different sets of 6. So we've got, but it's all using the same sheet. If we go look at the parts here, I've got print labor printed multiple times. I've got trim cap multiple times. So I've got all my parts listed multiple times. So you could use the same method that we went through earlier and just go down the added actual usage and just put in the usage for each of those parts individually. Well, with this screen, so unlike the part usage screen that we looked at after this, you can actually come up here under the top left here, change this from detail view to summary view. And what that will do is combine all of the similar parts together, but still let you post the usage. So that way, if you didn't want to post everything separately, so having to post 6 sheets 3 different times, I just come over here and post the overall usage. So you can combine multiple parts and post the usage at one time without having to go through and put in 3 different print ink parts, 3 different print labors, 3 different printers. So it's a nice way to kind of help speed up the posting if you wanted to post it as kind of a lump sum on the order instead of having to go through each one. But it only does similar parts. So if I had 3 different types of acrylic, it would still show 3 separate acrylic parts on this job. So that's kind of an introduction to what the part costs are, how they're important, and how to post them. Now, obviously, now that you have the part costs there, we want to be able to do stuff with that. And there are several different reports that we can run in the system to utilize these numbers. The first report that you can do is from within the order itself. You can actually come over here to say print, and then there's usually a section here for other detail reports. And under here, we have a cost analysis by order. And this is that's a real simple report, and all it does is it just takes that job and gives you something that lets you print out and see, okay, here's the job, here's the part that was estimated, and here's what was actually posted. So let's just go through and see, okay, we estimated the job to be this much, and this much margin, and in the end it actually ended up being this much. So it's just a good report that you can run and print out to compare what the job was going to make and what the job actually ended up making. So it's a good report to kind of look and see the differences there. But this is on an individual level. Maybe we want to get a little bit higher level. That's where we can go and say under the top section, if we go to reports, parts and inventory, there are several reports here. We've got estimated actual, and there's a couple different versions. They're roughly all the same report. They just give the information broken down a little bit differently. So is it a summary? Is it by salesperson? Is it by product? But they're all roughly the same report. So we're going to say the estimated versus actual cost summary. And there's a lot of different options. On a personal level, I like to pretty much only do the closed and sale orders because typically estimates, built jobs, WIP jobs, a lot of those jobs really don't have costs posted yet. So I usually will uncheck everything but the closed and sale orders myself. And then we don't have a whole lot of orders in here, so I'm going to go ahead and say a date range of all, but you can give it a date range if you don't want to specify everything. So with that, if I go here and hit preview, what what we'll get is a report given me for the time frame given. Here's the overall order, here's the income, here's what the cost was, here's what the estimated margin was, and here's what the actual margin is. So unless you're posting usage, unless you're going through and posting actual usages pretty consistently, this report may look a little bit off, but this is kind of what it's doing. And we're not seeing the job that we just did because that job is still in WIP, so it wouldn't show in this report. But the main thing here is, since you can run this for a time frame, this would help you spot trends. So if you're looking through this report and your margins are almost always coming up much, much higher, much, much lower, so maybe your estimating is always off, you can use this to maybe spot trends. And there's a couple of different ways of running this report. So if you wanted to run it by product to see if certain products are trending, that's where you can really start to use this and start to see, our estimating is almost always coming up 10% less, or our estimating is always coming up a little bit more. You can use this to help spot trends and make adjustments to your costing or your pricing based off what the values that you're seeing that are being posted. So, if I go back into that report, come on now. It looks like it's taken a second to catch up. But yeah, so we can just run a couple of those other versions of this report. And they're all roughly the same look. They just have different grouping options. So right now it's grouping by the order. We can group it by, as you saw, the product category. We can group it by the order and show the details. So right now this is just a summary of these items. So it's not breaking them down. And there goes my control. All right. But that's essentially what was going on, was that report. And there's so we saw that estimated versus actual. There was also a couple of cost analysis reports in that same section that worked the same way. So it was under reports, parts and inventory, and cost analysis by, and then a couple different categories of that one, cost analysis by order, by primary salesperson, which is roughly the same report. So that's really kind of how the system lets you post part usage, how the different ways to post the part usages, the different meaning behind them, and the different reports that you can run. So open the floor to any questions about that. Does anyone have any questions about the posting of actual usages, actual costs, and kind of the importance there? That's the other ones I was referring to. So cost analysis by product gives you pretty much the same report, but it groups it by product, so that way you can kind of compare products to see if a certain product is trending high or low. So that's kind of where usage is. So the last comment I would make, though, is obviously for this report to be accurate, you do have to be diligent of making sure that your cost posting is being done on a consistent basis. Because if someone's not posting the usage correctly, or someone's forgetting to post the usage, you would have a number that's going to throw off all your other numbers because it's looking at a particular value to be correct. So if that value is incorrect, then it's not going to be able to post it accurately. So that's the last comment I would make in terms of posting usage. So any questions on posting part usage or anything related to that? Okay, well, like I said, this video will be posted up on the website hopefully in about a week or so. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording now.